Good morning, everyone. People often comment or ask, oh, so you're Orthodox. And I always say to them, first of all, I'm not Orthodox. I'm a Jew. And I don't believe in labels. Labels are good for clothing or for shoes or for food products. But Jews should never be labeled because labels only divide us. Orthodox, Reform, Conservative. When we stood at Mount Sinai, we were just a Jewish people. There was no Orthodox section, Conservative, or Reform section. And when our enemies on October 7th came to kill us, they didn't care if you were Orthodox, Conservative, or Reform. So first of all, we should drop the labels because we're just all Jews. We're all the same, trying to be the best we can be. But there's another reason why I don't believe in the term Orthodox. And that's why we're the Palm Beach Synagogue, not the Palm Beach Orthodox Synagogue. We're a synagogue for all Jews. A matter of fact, the vast majority of our members aren't Orthodox. They're just Jews who love being together with other Jews in a synagogue. But this week's Torah portion, we have the commandment of tefillin, the phylacteries. And the Torah says you should bind it for a sign upon your hand and on your forehead between your eyes. And this is the mitzvah of tefillin. And what does the tefillin teach us? It teaches us that as Jews we have to act in this world with three-pronged approach. The first one is intellect, study, knowledge, which represents the tefillin on our forehead, on our brain, on our intellect. But it's not enough to have intellect. You also have to have your heart, your emotions connected to your intellect. As someone said, no one cares how much you know unless they know how much you care. You have to have compassion and love. And therefore the tefillin goes on the left arm next to the heart. The box of the arm tefillin is pressing against your heart. And then, of course, you strap the tefillin along your arm, representing action, your deeds. So first you have thought, understanding, then you infuse your emotions with your understanding, and then you act based on your intellect and your emotions. And you need all three together. But if you ask Jewish law, what's the most important thing? Is it better to think and feel without acting, or is it better to act and do the good deed, the mitzvah, even if it lacks the thought and the emotions that it should have? And the answer is very clear. The most important thing is the mitzvah, doing the good deed. When you give a poor man charity, of course you should do it with love and with compassion and with the understanding of why it's the just and righteous thing to do. But if you just think about charity and you don't give it, it doesn't help the poor man. But if you give the charity, even if you didn't have any thought or feeling, you gave the poor man food and clothing and shelter, and that's what matters most of all. The word orthodox in Greek, the root of the word means correct or proper thought. However, in Judaism, that's not the highest accolade. The highest accolade is actions, mitzvot. And therefore, it's more important to be orthoprax, which means your actions, your practices are ortho, are proper, are correct. And yes, we should strive to have the tefillin, which represents mind, heart, and action. But remember, the real measure of a person, the real judgment of who a person's character is reflected in their deeds and in their actions. This week we had heroes from Israel, from October 7th, who saved so many lives and risked their lives, come to Palm Beach Synagogue. And one of them was Rami Davidian. Rami was the farmer in the southern Israel who saved 750 young people from the Nova Music Festival when he was called and asked to go save a friend of his daughter, and stayed in touch with her and found her hiding behind a bush. And when he rescued her, other young people ran out of their hiding places. And he took them in his Jeep back to his house, and all day he went back and forth through back roads circumventing the terrorists. And over the course of the day, he saved 750 people. And he told an emotional story how a girl was calling him, pleading with him to come rescue her. And when he arrived, he saw her surrounded by 5 terrorists with AK-47s. And in a fearless moment, he approached them, and in perfect Arabic with an accent, he said to them, listen, I'm Hamas. I'm an Arab like you. And the police are a few minutes away. You better run. I'll take the girl, give it to me, I'll take her into Gaza as a hostage. And miraculously, they gave over the young girl to him. He said, I wanted to hug her, but I couldn't because they would know that I'm not an Arab. And I took her in the car back to my home. And 15, 20 minutes later, she was in safety. And after the event was over, I got out of my seat and made a beeline, a dash, straight for Rami. I gave him the biggest hug and thanked him for everything he did. Then I said, Rami, ten li bracha, give me a blessing. I want to have a blessing from you. And he looked at me and he knew I was the rabbi. He said, me give you a blessing? And I said, absolutely, I want your blessing. And I lowered my head for him to put his hands on my head and bless me. He wasn't wearing a kippah. He's not a religious man. He's not Orthodox. So he turned to someone else with a kippah and said, can I have your kippah? And he put his two hands on my head with the kippah on his head. And with his hands on my head, he gave me a beautiful blessing, asking me my name and my mother's name and my family. And as I stood there with my head lowered, bowed, and received his blessing, I felt his hands upon my head. And I thought to myself, what an honor, what a privilege, what a merit to have the hands of someone, the hands that rescued 750 lives, young, beautiful men and women who are going to go on to build generations and generations of the Jewish people. To have those holy hands that saved so many lives on my head, receiving a blessing, I truly felt like it was one of the highlights of my life. And when I think about that blessing, it gives me strength, it gives me warmth, that those precious hands that did such incredible deeds was upon my head. And I have to say, in all honesty, that no rabbi, no tzaddik's blessing would be greater than that blessing. That blessing, in my eyes, was one of the greatest blessings I could ever receive in my life. Never did I have the hands of someone who, with those hands, saved 750 Jewish lives. What a mitzvah, 750 worlds, because if you save one life, it's like you saved an entire world. You see, Rami may not be Orthodox, he may not be religious in the literal Orthodox translation of the word, but to me, he's the holiest Jew alive, and the greatest merit to have been in his presence and received his blessing. Let's remember, yes, we need to study, we need to have knowledge, we have to act with thought and feeling and intentionality, but let's make sure that our deeds are great. That's the strength of Am Yisrael, when we see all the mighty, powerful, loving, selfless deeds that people are performing day in, day out. Shabbat Shalom.